The price of honor. On the dry and cracked lands of planet Virexa, wind howled through the hills like a warning. The sun burned orange in the sky, and the people here had grown tough, hard like the stones beneath their feet. Life was not easy, and for Lyra's family, it was about to become worse. Lyra stood quietly near her home, a small clay house on the edge of the village. Her silver eyes stared at the dusty horizon. She could hear her parents arguing inside. She didn't need to hear the words. She already knew what they were talking about. The debt. It was not even their fault. Her father had taken a small loan from a human syndicate to buy clean water for the village. But then a drought came. Crops died. Money ran out. The humans came knocking, not with mercy, but with a contract. "Give us something of value," they had said. "Something beautiful. Something we can offer." Her father had refused. Her mother had cried. But in the end, there was only one thing they could offer to stop the humans from destroying them: Lyra. She was the eldest daughter, known for her calm eyes and graceful walk. Some in the village had even called her Moonborn, a compliment for her soft violet skin and shining silver eyes. But Lyra didn't care for beauty. She wanted peace. She wanted to help her people. So when her father finally said, "I'm sorry," she only nodded. She was to be sold as a bride. Not for love, not for happiness, but to repay a debt. The ship arrived the next morning. A black, sharp-edged transport with the human syndicate's mark burned onto the side. The village elders came to watch in silence. No one said a word. No one stopped it. This was the law of survival now. Lyra stood with her small bag, head high, heart pounding. Her mother kissed her forehead and whispered, "You are stronger than this planet." Her father didn't look her in the eye. His hands trembled. The door of the ship opened, and two human guards in dark armor stepped out. One of them held a tablet. He read her name without emotion. Lyra Virexi. Confirmed. You belong to Commander Jace Monroe now. He paid the full amount. You are now his bride. The words felt like iron in her chest, but she didn't cry. She walked up the ramp, looked once over her shoulder at her home, and stepped inside the cold ship. The ride was quiet. No one talked to her. The guard stayed silent, avoiding her eyes. She wanted to ask what her new groom was like, but fear held her tongue. She had heard stories about Commander Jace Monroe. Some said he was a war hero. Others whispered he was a butcher. Some said he had no soul, no smile, no kindness in him. He had lost his entire team in the alien wars. Since then, he had never taken a real wife, until now. He only wants an alien bride to show power, a village boy had once told her. He doesn't care who she is. You're just a trophy to him. She tried not to think about that. When the ship finally landed on a massive stone base surrounded by metal walls and towers, Lyra's heart beat faster. This was not a home. It looked like a prison, or a battlefield. She was led through long halls of steel and lights. Everything smelled like oil and fire. Finally, the guard stopped in front of a heavy black door. "He's inside. Don't speak unless spoken to," the guard said, then walked away. Lyra stood there, shaking inside but keeping her face calm. Slowly, she lifted her hand and knocked. The door opened, and everything she had imagined broke. Standing inside was not a monster, not a beast, not even a soldier in full armor. It was a man. Young, maybe late 20s, tall with broad shoulders and dark hair tied back. He wore a plain black shirt and dark pants. His arms were scared, like he had seen too many battles. His face looked tired, but his eyes, they were soft and sad. He didn't move closer. He just looked at her and said quietly, "You must be Lyra." She nodded, unsure what to say. He stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Come in. I don't bite." She entered, her legs stiff. The room was simple, just a bed, a desk, and a window. No guards, no chains. "You don't have to fear me," he said, watching her carefully. "I didn't ask for a bride. They forced this on both of us." Lyra blinked. "Then, why accept it?" He looked away, jaw tight. "Because if I didn't, your family would have been destroyed." Silence filled the room. In that moment, something shifted inside her. She had come expecting a monster. But now she saw a man, lonely, broken, and maybe more trapped than she was. Still, she didn't trust him. Not yet. But something told her this story was not going to end the way she expected. The silent groom. Lyra couldn't sleep that night. The room was clean, the bed was soft, and the air was warm. It was better than her entire house back on Virexa. Still, her heart beat like a drum inside her chest. She stared at the ceiling, listening for any sound. Footsteps. A knock. Anything. But there was only silence. And that silence was the most confusing thing of all. Commander Jace Monroe, the man she had been given to, had not touched her. Not even once. He had not shouted, had not ordered her to kneel, or told her to act like a wife. He had only shown her the room and said, "You're safe here. Sleep well." Then, he left. Just like that. The next morning, Lyra woke to a soft knock on her door. She opened it and found a young woman standing there, wearing the uniform with the name Mira on it. Mira had short hair, brown eyes, and a kind smile. "Breakfast is ready," she said gently. "You don't have to eat with the others. The commander said you can take it in your room if you want." "The commander? Jace?" Lyra asked carefully. Mira nodded. "Yes, he said to treat you with respect. You're his guest." "Guest?" Lyra blinked. "Not bride." Later that day, Lyra wandered around the base. The place was large, cold metal halls, tall sliding doors, machines buzzing. She passed by human soldiers training in silence, engineers typing on glowing screens, and droids carrying supplies. Many of them glanced at her, but quickly looked away. Some looked scared. Some looked sad. But none looked happy to see her. Something was off. She finally reached a large window at the back of the base. It showed the barren landscape of Virexa, sand dunes, cracked stones, and far-off mountains. She stood there, letting the light touch her face, when a voice behind her made her freeze. "You're braver than I expected." It was Jace. She turned slowly and saw him standing a few feet away, arms crossed. He wasn't smiling, but he didn't look angry either. Just tired. "You shouldn't be alone out here," he said. "Some of my men don't trust aliens." Lyra lifted her chin. "And do you?" There was a long pause. Then he said, "I trust actions, not words, not species, just actions." She studied his face. "Why did you buy me then, if you didn't want a bride?" He looked out the window. His voice was low. "Because your father was in debt to a cruel man. That man wanted to take everything. I paid the price to stop him. And now I belong to you," she said bitterly. He turned to her, eyes sharp. "No, you belong to no one." Days passed. Lyra noticed things. Jace barely spoke to anyone. When he walked through the base, people moved aside. Not out of respect, but fear. Whispers followed him. He should have died with his team. He still talks to ghosts. That alien bride won't last a week. Lyra hated the way they looked at her, like she was a curse, a problem. One evening, she followed Jace to a room she hadn't seen before. It was dark, filled with broken armor, scorched helmets, and cracked visors. On the wall were photos, humans and aliens together, smiling. Young soldiers, full of life. All gone now. She touched one picture gently. A young woman with copper skin and bright eyes. She wore the same uniform Mira wore. "Was she one of yours?" Jace stood behind her. He didn't answer right away. Her name was Rayla. Half human, half Siluri. Smartest tech I ever knew. He picked up a burnt dog tag. She died screaming. I heard it in my headset before it cut out. Lyra turned to him. I'm sorry. They were my family, he said. 27 soldiers. All lost. We were ambushed by a Virexan rebel group. Your people. Lyra's breath caught. Not all Virexans are the same, she said. We're not one mind. I know, he replied. That's why you're still alive. That night, Lyra sat alone outside the base walls under the stars. The night air was cold but peaceful. She looked up at the twin moons and thought of home. She thought of her little brother, her mother's hands, her father's quiet voice. You shouldn't be out here alone, Jace said again behind her. But this time, she didn't flinch. Why don't your people like me? He sat down beside her, his back against the wall. Because they think I'm cursed, and they think you brought more of it. She gave a bitter laugh. They fear me, even when I've done nothing. He looked at her. Fear is easier than understanding. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Lyra asked, Will I be your wife? Truly. Jace looked at her with those deep, tired eyes. Only if you choose it, not because of some contract, not because of a debt. I won't force you to be anything you don't want to be. She stared at him. No man had ever said that to her. Not on her planet. Not ever. In that moment, something shifted between them. A small bridge was built, made not of words, but of shared pain. But just as she started to trust him, an alarm rang across the base. A red light blinked above them. Base breach. Unauthorized entry detected. Jace was on his feet instantly, his voice sharp and cold. Get inside now. Lock your door. What's happening? We're under attack, he said. And I think they're here for you. The broken passed. The red lights kept flashing. The alarm screamed through the metal halls. Lyra's heart pounded as she followed Jace through a maze of corridors, deeper into the base. Soldiers rushed past them, some shouting commands, others grabbing weapons. She could feel the panic in the air. It was heavy, like a storm waiting to explode. Who's attacking? She asked breathlessly, trying to keep up with Jace's long strides. Unknown, he said sharply. But they bypassed our outer sensors. That means someone on the inside helped them. A traitor. He nodded. Most likely. And I don't think this is just a normal attack. They want something. Lyra felt a chill crawl up her spine. Me? Jace didn't answer, but the look in his eyes told her enough. He brought her to a secure room, a sealed chamber with a reinforced door. Inside were supplies, screens, and emergency gear. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone unless it's me, he said. But, no, you're not trained. If they find you, they won't ask questions, and I won't risk your life. He paused, then added more softly, Please, Lyra. She slowly nodded. Be careful, Jace. And with that, the door hissed shut between them. Time passed slowly. Lyra sat in the room, listening to every distant boom, every shake of the walls. Something wasn't right. This wasn't a random attack. It was planned, targeted. She looked around the room. On one of the walls was a data terminal. The screen was still active. She hesitated, then stepped closer. The terminal wasn't locked. Curious, she tapped the screen. A list of files appeared. Most were labeled in codes, military reports, logistics, maps. But one folder caught her eye. Operation Nightfall. She clicked it, and what she saw made her legs weaken. Video logs, images, reports, all from the day Jace lost his squad. She watched the footage. Humans and aliens laughing, talking, ready for their mission. Among them was Jace, smiling, a rare sight. He looked younger, more alive. Then the footage changed. Screams, fire, a ship exploding midair, people running, bodies falling, static, gunfire, and in the final seconds, A blurred image of Virex and rebels, painted in war symbols. Her people. Lyra covered her mouth, trembling. Her people had done this. And now she understood why the others hated her, why they looked at her like she was poison. But I didn't do it, she thought. I didn't know. I was just a child when this happened. Still, guilt wrapped around her heart like chains. Suddenly, the door beeped. She jumped to her feet. The door opened, and it wasn't Jace. It was Mira. Her uniform was torn, her face covered in sweat. "We need to move," Mira whispered. "The attackers are inside. They're searching every room." Lyra grabbed the nearest small blade from a shelf. "Where's Jace?" "He's fighting them off at the West Wing. He told me to get you out. Come on." Together, they ran. As they moved through the dark halls, they passed signs of chaos. Burned doors, fallen soldiers, alarms still flashing. But something strange caught Lyra's eye. One of the fallen humans had a Virexan weapon, a curved blade only used by her people. How did they get these weapons past security? She asked Mira. Mira glanced back, nervous. They had help from someone on the inside. Who? Mira didn't answer. Instead, she turned a corner and suddenly raised her gun. "I'm sorry, Lyra." Lyra froze. "What are you doing? You weren't supposed to survive," Mira said coldly now. "You were just a deal. A symbol. You were never supposed to get close to him." "You're the traitor," Lyra whispered, horrified. Mira nodded. "The humans don't want peace. Not really. And some of us don't want Jace to forget who he's supposed to hate." Lyra gripped the blade tighter. "You lied to me." "I had to. Jace trusts me. He would never expect it from me. But you're just an alien. One more problem to remove." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the hallway, and Mira dropped to the floor. Behind her stood Jace, his weapon still smoking. His eyes locked on Lyra. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head slowly, still shaking. He stepped closer, checking her arms for wounds. When he was sure she was safe, he looked down at Mira's body with pain in his eyes. "I trusted her," he muttered. "She tried to kill me," Lyra said, her voice cracking. "And she almost killed me too. From the inside out." Back in his quarters, after the base was secured, Jace sat at his desk while Lyra stood by the window. "You saw the files, didn't you?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I saw what my people did. I'm sorry." He didn't look at her. "I didn't bring you here for revenge. I brought you here because I thought maybe I could stop another war before it starts." She turned to him, eyes full of questions. "Why me?" He finally looked at her. "Because when I saw your eyes, I didn't see a killer. I saw hope. A chance to prove that we're more than what others made us." Lyra walked toward him slowly. "Do you really believe that?" He gave a tired smile. "I want to." And then, without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. Not as a prisoner. Not as a bride. But as someone who finally understood the pain he carried. And maybe, just maybe, wanted to help carry it. Betrayal at midnight. The night on planet Virexa was cold and silent again, but inside the human base, trust had burned to ashes. Jace had called for a full lockdown after the betrayal. Mira's body was removed quietly. No announcement was made. Only a small circle knew the truth, and even among them, whispers replaced certainty. The soldiers were shaken. If someone like Mira, loyal, calm, trusted, could betray the commander, then who else might be hiding behind a mask? Jace didn't leave his quarters for hours. He sat alone, watching old footage of his lost team. Their smiles, their final mission, the screams. Again and again. His mind replayed it like a punishment. Outside his room, Lyra paced the hallway. She wanted to knock, to say something, anything. But what could she say to a man who had lost everything twice? Once in war, and now again to someone he had trusted. She returned to her own room, but sleep didn't come. She stared at the ceiling and thought about Mira's last words. You were never supposed to survive. Why? Why was her death planned? And what else had Mira been hiding? Around midnight, the lights flickered. Then they went out. Total darkness swallowed the base. Lyra sat up, alarmed. The red emergency lights didn't come on. Then, boom! A low rumble shook the walls. Something exploded in the distance. She jumped out of bed and opened her door. Chaos had returned. Soldiers ran through the halls, shouting. Some had weapons drawn. Smoke filled the corridors. The air smelled like fire again. Another attack. So soon. She ran toward Jace's quarters, but before she reached it, she was grabbed from behind. Lyra. She turned. It was Jace, covered in ash and blood. They've breached the control center, he said, pulling her into a side corridor. The entire power grid has been taken down. Someone inside is helping them again. Another traitor. More than one, I think, he growled. Where do we go? We can't run. Not this time. He looked into her eyes. They want you. And now, I want to know why. They raced through the base, sticking to the shadows. Jace led her to a small storage vault hidden beneath the engineering bay. The entrance required a code. And a DNA scan. It opened only to him. Inside, they found a private terminal, still working off its own generator. Jace sat at the console and began typing. What are you doing? Lyra asked. Digging, he muttered. Mira had clearance to top-level reports. She must have left something behind. Files flashed across the screen. Maps, contracts, personal messages. And then, a hidden file, labeled only PA1. He opened it. A video message appeared. Mira's voice filled the room. Commander Monroe will protect the alien girl. That's predictable. He's still weak from guilt. What he doesn't know is that she was marked long before the contract. Her bloodline. Virex and Noble, direct descendant of the royal line. The rebels want her alive. The Syndicate wants her dead. Either way, her presence will ignite war. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Noble blood, she whispered. Jace stared at her. You didn't know. She shook her head. My father always said we were simple people. Farmers. Survivors. He leaned forward. But if Mira was telling the truth, then you're more than that. You're the last piece of a forgotten empire. Your death or survival could shift the balance of power in this galaxy. Just then, another explosion hit, this time closer. Dust fell from the ceiling. The console screen flickered. Jace stood up, face hard. We need to move. If they get control of the full database, they'll erase every trace of what we just found. We have to expose them. Let the galaxy see what they've done. Lyra grabbed his hand. Then let's do it, together. They headed toward the communication tower, the tallest part of the base, now half destroyed, fire creeping along its side. To reach it, they had to pass the main hallway, where rebels now battled what was left of Jace's loyal team. They ducked behind cover. Gunfire lit the walls. Explosions rocked the ground. Jace looked at Lyra. We split up. You take the side path. I'll draw them toward me. When you get to the tower, send the file. Upload it to the Galactic network. The truth must go out. No, I'm not leaving you, Lyra cried. He gave her a tired smile. I survived worse. You're the only one who can do this now. Go. Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. She ran. Through the shadows, past the bodies, through the smoke and flame. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. Meanwhile, Jace stepped into the open hallway like a ghost from the past. Rebels saw him. Guns rose. Fire burst around him. He fought like a man with nothing to lose. Lyra reached the tower and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. The terminal still had power. She plugged in the device. The screen blinked. Upload in progress. 12%. 18%. Outside the window, she could see more rebel ships landing. Time was running out. Suddenly, a voice behind her. Step away from the terminal. She turned. It was Commander Soren, a human officer Jace had trusted, one of the base leaders. You? She whispered. He raised his weapon. It was always about balance. Jace wanted peace. But peace is boring. War makes money. Power. Your death ensures that war continues. Lyra stepped in front of the terminal, blocking the upload with her body. Then you'll have to shoot me. He smirked. Gladly. But the shot never came. Jace appeared behind him, covered in blood, and slammed him to the floor. You won't touch her. They fought. Brutal, fast, unforgiving. And while they did, the upload reached 100%. Across the stars, the message broadcasted. Mira's confession. The contract. The plan to start war. Millions would see it. The galaxy would know the truth. In the end, Jace collapsed to his knees, wounded but alive. Lyra knelt beside him, holding his hand. You did it, she whispered. No, he said, smiling weakly. We did. And outside, the fires began to die. The human heart. The sun rose slowly over the broken towers of the base, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Smoke still drifted into the sky, but the gunfire had stopped. Silence had returned, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that comes after everything has fallen apart. Jace sat against a collapsed wall, one arm wrapped around his ribs, blood soaking through his shirt. His breath was slow, labored, but his eyes were still sharp. Lyra sat beside him, her hands trembling as she tied makeshift bandages around his wounds. The file had been sent. The galaxy now knew the truth, but that truth had a price. They were fugitives now. Less than an hour after the upload, the first message came through the damaged comlink. Commander Monroe is to be arrested for treason. The alien girl is to be detained and handed over to Central Command for questioning. Jace had only chuckled bitterly. So that's their answer to the truth. Silence it. They didn't wait around. Jace grabbed a backpack with food, medicine, and a stolen comm chip. Lyra carried a broken data tablet, still holding Mira's confession as backup. Together, they escaped through the base's underground tunnels, just minutes before a fleet arrived to clean up the evidence. Now, days later, they walked through the deserts of Phyrexia. Sand stretched in every direction. The air shimmered with heat, but they kept moving. They couldn't stay in one place for long. At night, they built small fires from dry brush. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them had changed. It was no longer cold or unsure. It was safe, like the silence between people who had already said the most important things. One night, Lyra watched Jace from across the fire. His face was lit by the flames, and his eyes stared into the distance, lost in thought. "What are you thinking?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "About what I used to believe. That duty was everything. That following orders would keep people safe. But orders got my team killed. And the truth nearly got you killed." Lyra leaned closer. "Then what do you believe now?" He looked at her. "I believe in the person who stood in front of a loaded gun to protect the truth. I believe in you." Her breath caught. No one had ever said something like that to her before. As the days passed, they grew closer. Lyra learned how to shoot, how to hide tracks, how to read human tech. Jace, in return, listened as she told stories of her childhood. Her little brother who wanted to fly, her mother who sang to the moon. For the first time in a long while, Jace smiled. But even in these quiet moments, danger was never far. One evening, while hiding in a rocky cave system, they received a signal. A coded message blinked on the stolen comm chip. Jace decoded it quickly. His face turned pale. "They found your family." Lyra's heart dropped. What? My village? He nodded grimly. They've taken them. Said they'll trade their lives. For yours. She stood up, fists clenched. Then we have to go. I won't let them die because of me. Jace grabbed her arm. Lyra, this could be a trap. I don't care. Her voice shook with emotion. They're all I have. He didn't argue. He just nodded. Then we'll go together. They made their way toward the village where it all began. The roads were no longer familiar, burned, broken, guarded by patrols. But they kept going. Every mile brought back memories for Lyra, some warm, others sharp like knives. When they reached the outskirts of her village, Jace stopped her. Let me go first, he said. If this is a trap, they'll expect you, not me. Lyra hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. He disappeared into the shadows of night. An hour passed. Then another. Suddenly, a flash of light. A blast. Screams. Lyra ran. She didn't care who saw her. She didn't care if she died. When she reached the square at the heart of the village, she saw the impossible. Jace, surrounded, beaten, bleeding, but still standing. Around him were armed syndicate guards and a man with a silver coat and cold eyes. Commander Vesk, a former leader from the Human Alliance. Give us the girl, Vesk sneered, and maybe we'll let your people go. Jace spit blood at his feet. You're a coward, hiding behind guns and lies. You chose a side, Monroe, the wrong one. Then, Lyra stepped into the light. Let them go. Take me instead. Jace turned. No. Vesk smiled. How noble. But no. We'll take both of you. The guards moved in. But then, a roar of engines. From the sky, a stolen fighter ship descended, its side hatch open. Inside, a familiar voice shouted, Lyra, get in. It was her younger brother, Talum. Lyra froze in shock. How did you? Jace sent me a message, days ago. Told me to be ready. Said this might happen. Jace, even beaten and bruised, had planned a backup. Lyra turned to him. Can you move? I've had worse, he muttered, trying to smile. They ran. Blaster fire chased them. But Talon's ship rose fast, leaving the guards behind in a cloud of dust and flame. Safe inside, Jace collapsed into Lyra's arms. She held him tightly. Why would you risk your life like that? She whispered. He looked up at her, eyes soft. Because for the first time, I'm fighting for something real. The ship disappeared into the skies. But across the stars, their story was spreading. People who had seen the broadcast began to question, to whisper, to hope. One human and one alien, running for their lives, fighting against lies, holding on to each other. And in the middle of war and betrayal, something powerful was growing. Not just a bond, but love, the fire and the storm. The desert gave way to stone canyons, and the sky turned gray with clouds that hadn't been seen in weeks. As the stolen fighter ship flew over the ragged cliffs of western Virexa, a storm was brewing, in the sky and in their fate. Jace lay on a stretcher in the ship's small med bay, hooked to a healing unit. His chest rose and fell slowly, his body recovering from the brutal encounter at the village. His face was bruised, ribs cracked, but he was alive. Lyra sat beside him, refusing to sleep. Her fingers gently brushed over his hand, watching him in silence. You planned a way out, she whispered softly, even though he couldn't hear. You thought of me, even when you were bleeding. Behind her, her younger brother Talum piloted the ship through the narrow valleys, his young face focused and alert. The ship rattled with the force of coming winds. We're almost there, he called out. The coordinates Jace left. They lead to the old ruins. Lyra stood and walked to the cockpit. Ruins. Talum nodded. Old Virexan archives. Lost after the first rebellion. Jace believed they held secrets, proof about the Syndicate's lies, the real cause of the war, and maybe something bigger. Lyra looked out at the approaching cliffs. Then that's where we'll find our truth. The ship landed in a narrow canyon surrounded by ancient stone towers. Vines had crawled over the broken ruins. Strange symbols were carved into every wall. The place felt forgotten, silent, sacred, and dangerous. With Jace still unconscious, Lyra and Talum set up camp just outside the main temple-like structure. They carried him gently into the ruins and laid him near the central chamber. Hours later, as the wind howled outside, Jace opened his eyes. Lyra leaned over at him, her face filled with relief. "You're awake." "Barely," he whispered. "Where are we?" "The ruins. The place you told Talum to go." Jace blinked slowly, then tried to sit up, wincing. "Then we're close. Help me. We need to get inside." Together, they entered the heart of the archive. Deep underground, through collapsed halls and mossy staircases, they reached a sealed door. The wall glowed with ancient Vyrexen text, runes older than any language known to humans. Lyra stepped forward. As she neared, the door responded to her presence. The symbols lit up with soft blue light. "It knows you," Jace said, amazed. She placed her hand on the door. It slid open. Inside, the air was thick with age and silence. A huge circular chamber opened before them, filled with crystal walls, each holding holographic memories from thousands of years ago. The chamber was powered by an energy core, still active after centuries. Lyra walked slowly into the room, awed by the glowing lights around her. Suddenly, one of the crystals lit up. A projection appeared, a Vyrexen queen, speaking in the old tongue, her face full of sorrow. Talum translated quietly. "She speaks of betrayal, of a deal made with early human factions, a pact that promised peace in exchange for resources, but the humans broke it. They spread lies. They blamed the Vyrexens for attacks caused by other species." Another projection lit up, this time a secret treaty, signed by the human syndicate and rebel leaders, agreeing to start a controlled war to keep both sides divided and weak. Jace stepped forward, breathing hard. "This is it. This is the truth." "It was never about revenge," Lyra said, voice shaking. "It was always about control." They downloaded the holographic memories into Jace's data chip. But just as they were about to leave, the ground shook. Outside, the wind had become a storm, lightning cracking across the sky, sand spinning in the air like knives. And worse, they weren't alone. From the cliffs above, a dropship landed. Dark figures jumped down, elite syndicate hunters, heavily armed, faces hidden behind black visors. Their leader, a tall figure with a scar down his neck, raised a speaker. "Give us the girl and the data. This ends tonight." Lyra stood in front of the ruins, eyes fierce. "Never." Jace raised his blaster, standing beside her, pain etched into his face. "Then come take it." The storm screamed around them. Sand blinded. Thunder roared. And then, the fire began. Blasters lit the sky. The ruins exploded with flashes of light. Talum took cover behind stones, returning fire. Jace fought beside Lyra, side by side, covering each other like two halves of the same soul. A shot hit Jace's side. He grunted but stayed standing. Lyra screamed, firing back. She moved like a warrior now, strong, fearless. Her eyes burned not with fear, but with purpose. And then, one final flash. The leader of the hunters raised a rocket launcher. But before he could fire, Talum jumped from behind and tackled him off the cliff. Both fell. Silence. Lyra ran to the edge, calling her brother's name. But there was only dust. When the dust settled, the syndicate troops lay defeated, but at a heavy cost. Jace held Lyra close as she wept. "He saved us," she cried. "He saved everything." He was brave, Jace whispered, just like you. That night, they buried Talum under the ancient stars of their home. Lyra stood with Jace, holding the data chip tightly. We can't stop now, she said. No, Jace agreed. Now we go to the Galactic Council. Now we bring the fire to their doors. The storm above faded. But in their hearts, the storm had just begun. The bride who changed 2 worlds. The Galactic Council's chambers had never been this silent. 12 towering figures, alien leaders, human diplomats, robotic advisors, sat in a circle made of glowing crystal and stone. Around them, thousands watched the live broadcast across star systems. Soldiers, merchants, scholars, and families on distant planets had all stopped what they were doing. Because today, one alien woman and a human man were about to expose a lie that had lasted for generations. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Lyra stood in the center of the chamber. Her violet skin shimmered under the soft lights. Her silver eyes, once filled with fear, now held only fire. She wore simple clothing, not a dress for royalty or battle gear for war, just a plain tunic and dark trousers. Because she didn't come as a queen. She didn't come as a warrior. She came as the truth. Beside her stood Jace Monroe, leaning slightly on a cane, still healing from the injuries of battle. His face was hard, unreadable. But his hand rested on Lyra's back, steady and firm. Behind them, a holographic platform flickered to life. Talum's voice echoed through the chamber, pulled from the final memory Lyra had saved before he died. My sister believed in peace. My commander believed in truth. I fought for both. If you hear this, and still stay silent, then you are the enemy of everything good in this galaxy. A wave of murmurs swept the room. Then Lyra stepped forward. Honorable Council, she began, her voice calm but clear. I was sold to pay a debt I never created. I was taken as a bride by a man I believed to be a monster. But I was wrong. She turned to Jace briefly, then looked back at the council. I found in him not a captor, but a heart more loyal and kind than anyone I had ever known. Jace's jaw clenched, emotions fighting behind his eyes. We were enemies by birth, she continued, but we became partners by choice. She tapped the console beside her. The hologram changed. It showed Mira's confession, then the secret human syndicate treaty, the holographic memories from the ruins, and finally, a list of names, those who had knowingly kept the war going for profit. The room went still. Some of the council members looked away. Others leaned forward, shocked. A few whispered to their aides. Lyra didn't stop. My people were blamed. His people were tricked. We were all used, and so many died for a lie. One of the human councilmen stood up. His voice was cold. Even if your evidence is true, you acted outside the law. You invaded secure bases, attacked government forces, leaked classified files. Jace cut him off. And we saved lives. The chamber gasped. Jace stepped forward slowly. How many more would have died? How many more brides would have been sold? How many more commanders would have been used like me? Just tools to keep a war going. He paused, breathing hard. You want to judge us? Fine. Judge me. But leave her out of it. She came here to make peace. I followed her because she reminded me what being human is supposed to mean. Lyra touched his arm. Then she looked back at the council. I don't want revenge. I want truth. I want the galaxy to stop looking at skin, species, and scars, and start listening to what people carry inside them. Her voice trembled, but didn't break. I came as a debt. I stayed as a partner. But I stand here now, as a witness to the lie that nearly destroyed us all. The room fell into complete silence. Then, slowly, one of the alien council members stood. A reptilian creature with golden eyes. The Virexan girl speaks true. I served during the Second Flame War. I remember how strange it felt when peace talks were canceled for no reason. I now wonder if that war was never meant to end. Another stood. Then another. Some cried, others stayed quiet. But the message had landed. Outside the chambers, riots had turned into rallies. Across colonies, citizens began holding vigils, lighting torches in the name of unity. Hashtags and holoscreens lit up with 3 words. Hashtag She stood first. Hashtag Truth from the Bride. Hashtag Lyra and Jace. 1 week later, a message was broadcast across the galaxy. The syndicate members responsible for the false war were arrested. Their assets were frozen, their ranks removed. Human and Virexan leaders began peace talks in public, real ones. And a statue was built, not of soldiers or kings, but of 2 people standing side by side. 1 human, 1 alien. No weapons, just hands joined. In a quiet corner of a green planet, Jace and Lyra stood beneath a tree, watching children play. Jace had healed more. His cane was gone. His eyes, once filled with pain, now held peace. "You still think I'm a monster?" he teased gently. Lyra smirked. "No, just a very stubborn human." He chuckled. "And you're still too brave for your own good." She turned serious. "Do you think they'll keep the peace?" He looked at the sky. "I don't know. But I know this time. They're listening." They stood in silence. Then Jace said, softly, "You were once a bride sold to repay a debt, but now you've become the voice of a new world." Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder. "And you're the human who reminded me what love really means." They watched the wind carry the seeds of change across the field. And just like that, a story that began in chains ended in freedom. Not because of power, not because of politics, but because 1 alien girl dared to stand, and 1 human chose to stand with her. Together, they changed everything.